Solar power is one of the most prominent sources in clean energies. It is true that we have heard how promising solar power is. However, today we're going to talk about the biggest challenge of solar power. Renewable energy sources are getting cheaper by day and in some cases are the cheapest method for producing electricity. But there's a major downside that needs to get solved before renewable can really take over. That's how distribute power evenly over time. But there are solutions to this underway, and in some cases, they are already here. It is hard to deny that wind and solar power are the great approach to electricity production, especially with the report of the dropping cost of the coal, as you can see in this graph. Solar power in many cases are half the cost of a coal plant. In fact, 74% of existing US coal plants cost more to continue running than building replacement solar and wind farms. However, as we add more and more renewable sources into the grid, we are creating a challenge and a challenging in the electrical load problem for the grid and the utilities. The infamous duck curve. That's right. We are going to talk about a duck. Back in 2008, a group of researchers noticed a funny looking in shape in their modeling. They started to run projections of what might happen if photovoltaic panels were installed at scale. They noticed that large scale deployment had a peculiar effect on the electricity load curve. The shape that the electricity demand takes through the day, we can see in this graph. A typical load curve looks something like this. As you can see, demand peaks the as you can see, the demand spikes in the morning are in the morning when everyone wakes up, and again in the evening when everyone gets home from work. So before the climbing at night. Total load minus renewable energy is known as dead load. That's the largest utilities have to hit with their resources. As more and more solar power is integrated into the grid, it starts dramatically to suppressing net load during midday. When the sun is out, the net load curve drops in the middle of the day like a belly, as you can see in this figure, and then jumps back up when the sun goes down like a neck, like you can see in the graph. It's just like the free load curve. I showed you a peak in the morning and a peak in the evening. Only between there's an enormous sack that gets bigger as more solar is added. Another group of researchers was noticing the same thing. They realized that high levels of solar penetration start generating a net load curve that it looks well like a dot curve. Can you see it? If you can't see it, here let me help. There is a dot curve.
Yeah, there's a duck.
Well, to ensure there's electricity available whenever you want to flip on a light switch, there's need to be just right amount of electricity being generated. The way this is handled today is with two types of power plants, baseload plants and peaker plants. Baseload power plants provide energy at a continuous level through the day and the week and even in the year. They are not able to adjust the rate of electricity generation quickly and are meant to just run. There are typically something like coal or nuclear plants or demand curve. You will set this to run around the lowest level of that curve. That's where picker plants come in. These are generally only run when they're high demand and are faster to wrap up than a base of the load plant. A lot of picker plants tend to be of natural gas or oil burning plants. The steeper the dough curve gets, the lower you need to run the base of the load plant, and the more you have to spin pickers plants to make the difference in demand. I have oversimplified this problem, but in a nutshell, that's the essential problem we have in our hands with some renewable like solar power. But this is a solvable problem. Energy storage can be used to spread out solar production more evenly and replace the need of picker plants to match demand. I found the solution and projections that are in the works. They are pretty interesting and exciting. One of these are the flow batteries, and they are really interesting technologies. They are a rechargeable cell that has two electrolyte liquids circulating from a giant vase and bound together. The positive and the negative charge liquids are separated by a membrane, which is where the electricity is generated from the exchange of ions. Another one is pump storage hydroelectricity. It is one of the most cost-effective methods to store electricity today. The way it works is to take the excess of lower cost electricity and pump it away from lower reservoir to an elevator reservoir. When electricity is needed, the elevator reservoir water is released through turbines to produce electric power as it flows back down of the lower reservoir. It is a very simple but effective system. So here are my final thoughts. Those are not a comprehensive list of all the technologies on the market on the way. There are things like saltwater batteries, molten salt or sodium sulfur batteries, or even others. There are a lot of interesting things in the works, but the point is that great scale energy storage is possible. In many cases, it's already here and they are being used every day. Most of the naysayers of renewable energy points to irregular energy production as why it will never work. We can be blinded by status quo thinking and assuming that the negative or renewable energy today can be overcome tomorrow. I find all of this very exciting for the future of renewable energies like solar power and even, for example, wind turbines. We all need more agile and resilient energy grid. So one that can provide all the energy we need. Thank you. Here are my reference, and I am open to hear your questions.